Arc 6, Chapter 65. The second, the fifth, followed by majestic and undaunted, the red-haired great man who had appeared in this place, Reed Istria. The unforeseen entrance of the man, his sharp blue eyes lacking any consideration for the other side's surprise, his very presence caused everyone, even Gluttony, to be at a loss for words. Reed, hey the hell you spassin' out for, you all? Is me bane here something so suprissin', huh? It's a matter of course And seeing Subaru and the others completely petrified, Reed slammed his left eye covered under his own eye patch and struck the sandals he was wearing onto the floor. A gesture, implicitly referring to the entire tower. Reed, I wasn't even able to take a nap cause of all the damn noise happenin' both outside and inside. It's so borin' that there ain't even drinks here in the first place, and then this happens. No way I'd tolerate it. Subaru, that's completely your own convenience, isn't it? As you can see, we're busy here in our own way. Don't make things more complicated. Reed, you said something, young fish. Sorry, but your voice is so low I couldn't hear a thin. Well, even if I could hear it, I'd still say I couldn't hear it. Subaru, nasty stubborn. And what was nasty was not merely his stubbornness, but also his timing. Too weak to blame him, not enough substance to protest him. Subaru, stumped by the violent and relentless words, realized that he was feeling afraid of Reed and tightened his fists. His soul remembered the sense of defeat pertaining to Reed's existence. That was not simply because of what all Reed had made him experience back when he used to be filled with suspicion. He had faced his repulsive audacity even in the previous loop. Subaru's heart was not supposed to have feared Reed this much back then. But now, at this moment, why could he feel it peculiarly, unusually severely? That was Subaru. Because my soul clearly recognizes you as an enemy, huh? Reed, nice, young fish. Don't mean to raise your status from a young fish, but I'll commend you for not misunderstandin' that I ain't any convenient support. Subaru, even if you said, rejoice I'm your support, there's no way it'd be possible to fully accept such words by you. Reed, sure said something. Unraveling his fangs in ferocity, Reed laughed like a shark whilst Subaru concealed the chills it sent down to his spine. Reed's proclamation just now was also a hopeless pronouncement of a certain kind. However, Subaru had never thought of Reed as something like an ally from the beginning. That had merely been affirmed. He had not been mistaken. And upon the arrival of Subaru and Reed's exchange at a point where it paused, Gluttony. Well, Sawai, Reed Istria. Yes, the personage who had promptly returned to his true spirit. Gluttony called out Reed's name. Right in the center of the frozen isle, the Sin Archbishop of Insanity was standing literally in the middle of Subaru and the others and Reed. And upon being glared by that line of sight glinted with vicious emotions, Reed looked towards Gluttony and snorted his nose in displeasure. Reed, oh, what is it, midget? What a filthy midget. What is it, filthy midget-chan? Gluttony, you're the first-generation sword saint, aren't you? Then why is that here again, According to our memories, you, the trial taker, shouldn't be able to come down from the upper floor. Isn't that right? Ignoring his humiliating nickname and provocative efforts, Gluttony fired the question at Reed. The memories he had spoken of were clearly Subaru's memories, which was quite infuriating, but Subaru and the others also shared the same question that he had raised. The trial taker of the second layer, Reed Istria's arrival onto the fourth layer. This was something Subaru had also witnessed in the previous loop, and had considered it as one of the 5 obstacles which must be cleared. The trick behind the phenomenon of him freely walking within the tower was entirely unknown. However, that phenomenon only occurred at this stage of the game. Should it be said that he had been able to walk around all this time, but simply chose not to, then the issue would be entirely different. Gluttony, whether there's a peculiar trick behind it, or whether the rules of the tower itself changed. Either way, you doing this is out of calculations, and we have no choice but to rethai NK the full course in a lot of ways. After having the appetizer is the main dish and then the dessert, that's standard, you know. Right, Reed. Don't ramble about such incomprehensible bullshit, filthy midget bloody bastard. Reed, I can't come do WN. Brace your eyes and look, you. You can understand the stupidity you're talkin' 'bout by talkin' a look. You over there. While speaking, Reed pitched forward towards Gluttony in displeasure. His form, with his white fangs unraveled and glaring with a single eye, was indeed like the natural style of a delinquent. However, the pressure his self exerted was incomparably more than those of delinquents who gather in front of convenience stores, enough to make one feel threatened for their life by simply its aftermath. Should it be equated, then what was standing there was a beast which was the mixture of a tiger, a bear, a lion, and a dragon all in a single body. Clad in every possible hint of violence, Reed bared his fangs. "Reed, don't joke round, you. I'm doin' whatever I want, however I want to. No way I'd accept someone's instructions, you. Don't be jockin' round, you. First of all, right back at ya, the hell 'bout you. Whose permission did you take to be mackin' a racket here? Hey, you over there, you." Gluttony. "Ahaha, how amazy NG, how unbe-rable, it's impossible to get talky NG." Turning the holy sword of ice he held in his hand into fragments of ice, Gluttony combed up his long bangs. It seemed even Gluttony couldn't fare well with an opponent who was this difficult to get dialogue across to. Even Emilia, for whom it was no use arguing, had hints of struggling, but Reed was multiple levels above Emilia in terms of getting conversation across to. "However," Gluttony said, although pertaining to the opponent this incompatible, and resumed, Gluttony. "As prey I tease the finest quality. Our appetite as gourmet is starting to crave binging Sue. Eat it away, chew it up, lick it all, attain the flavor. Gluttonous drinking Sue, gluttonied Sue." Roaring, maddening in excitement and ferocity, Gluttony positioned his limbs onto the frozen floor and glared at Reed, making his lengthy tongue peek through his white canines, as per the command of the aberrant appetite which indulged in the memories of others, impossible to be understood by ordinary men. His saliva drooled and dripped onto the floor. And lay. Which cult sin archbishop representing Gluttony lay baiting Cato's? Whether that statement was boastful or conceited, anyhow, Gluttony lay baiting Cato's gave his name, kicked the floor of ice the immediately following instant, and commenced his sprint with the velocity of a fired arrow. That spectacle was like the hunting ground of a ferocious quadruped, and his dash was wild enough to make one truly hallucinate that as well. Reed. "Ah, what a pain." Focusing on baiting Cato's charging ahead madly, Reed put a single finger in his ear and grumbled as if troubled. Reed. "Well then, I'm the swordsman, Horlarier. Subaru. Who even is that?" Reed. "The guy who lived beside my house in my hometown." Subaru thoughtlessly shouted at that excessively grand alias, to which Reed responded quite indifferently. Afterwards, he pulled his finger out of his ear and looked down onto baiting Cato's immediately before him. Lay. "Let's eat Sue." Reed. "Puttin' aside if the frizzlin' Nichan said this, but Bane told that by a dirty midget Chan like you ain't mackin' me happy." Lay. "Deezy Ute Sue." As baiting Cato's advanced in with his large mouth open, his body was intensely shifted horizontally. That was Reed's right leg crudely unleashed. Its kick captured baiting Cato's torso directly horizontally in order to energetically strike him into the wall of the aisle. Lay. "Goo, egg." Hick. "Reed, don't make the sound of a chicken Bane strangled you. Let me tell ya, a chicken tastes delicious after Bane's strangled, but I ain't intendin' to eat you. Don't care about gluttony or whatever." Lay. "Guy, Reed. You came jumpin' at an adult. Hope you're prepared for a spankin', yo you." Despite being caught up in the vigor, baiting Cato's retained his senses and gave a short grin, displaying extraordinary endurance. The subsequent instant, he positioned his arm upward, intending to bring down the dagger attached to his wrist onto Reed's leg with fierce strength, which invited Reed to twitch his eyebrows. Whilst speaking, Reed pushed baiting Cato's body onto the wall with his leg and started running across the frozen aisle with a single leg at an incomprehensible speed. Of course, having been pushed onto the wall and being slid across the surface of the wall which had the ruggedness of ice here and there, baiting Cato's was in no state to be able to resist. That damage was enormous and destructive. Lay. "Guy, Garevatsu." Reed. "Hey, don't start screamin' by juice this. This way it won't even be something to consider. This ain't even children's play in my era yet. Brats these days are not only filthy but also meager. Hey, yo you." Declaring with displeasure, Reed stopped his feet and turned around halfway through at that spot. With his leg, which had pressed baiting Cato's onto the wall unfastened, the body of the Sin Archbishop slid down. Before that, the left leg he had balanced himself with launched a rotating kick, which energetically slammed into baiting Cato's side, and his petite frame was lightly blown off. With unusual vigor, baiting Cato's sprang onto the floor whilst taking a defensive stance. The Sin Archbishop, rotating at a high speed and bleeding, went through the gap between Emilia and Julius and finally tumbled onto the aisle's interior horizontal to Subaru and Beatrice. As he lay spread-eagled, fallen on the floor, no longer did he display any of his former strength. All this was easily enough to kill anyone, but perhaps because of his exceptional awareness of defense, that was possibly not the case here. Subaru. That guy was the formidable enemy who had been overpowering both Emilia-chan and Julius till now, right? Beatrice? No question in that, in fact. But this one exceeds norms even more, I suppose. That's why, respectively, it can be said that the situation has worsened, in fact. Subaru. The war cards have only changed places, huh? Beatrice. That too, to a worse opponent, I suppose. Beatrice, whilst tightly holding Subaru's hand, was vigilant regarding Reed in front instead of the collapsed, immobile baiting Cato's. The same went for Emilia or Julius as well. The war situation had already changed from the battle against gluttony to a new warrior. Even in the midst of that, Emilia. Ria Ellie, thank you for beating the Sin Archbishop. And can't we just go ahead and get along like this? First, Emilia spoke to Reed in a friendly manner. She offered a proposal for peace befitting of her. However, in response, Reed shook his head, shrugged his shoulders, and stomped on the floor. Clearing away that proposal with those 3 gestures of his body, Reed scratched his head. Reed. Don't be saying such demotivatin' shit, you. Actually, the hell's up with ya, you. You're too frizzlin', the heck's happenin', it ain't a joke. Aren't ya fiercely frizzlin'? Why are you here in this place? You, the hell you doin' in this situation? Don't be tourin' round this sandy bullshit place. Instead, let's go for drinks tonight, you. Emilia. This is also the second time, though. Julius. Unfortunately, she cannot accompany you for your evening drinks. The reason being Reed. Oh. Julius. A night of peace shall not visit you, an illusion. Saying so, as if intercepting the inelegant comment, the sole man who stepped forward with his knight's sword, prepared Julius stood off Reed as if covering for Emilia, and sharpened his gaze by honing it with knightly spirit. Right before those yellow eyes, Reed changed his expression slightly. Reed. The hell, you, haven't you gotten a bit better eye? Did something good happen a woman gotta be a woman, right, you? Julius. I shall not deny that certain events happened which affected my preparedness in many ways, however. I will state that they were not because of involvement with a female. If the embrace of a female can heal a wounded heart, then so can the relentless reprimand of a friend. Reed, still a bastard who keeps beatin' round the bush that hasn't changed, eh? The hell do you wanna say? Julius. In other words, the fact that I am able to hold my sword like this is thanks to my friend. An instant after that declaration, Julius tipped up his knight's sword with sharp footsteps, painting the tip of his sword with beauty enough to make one doubt their eyes, and fired a strike towards Reed's neck. The opponent had not shown any hostility yet. Such a thoughtless identification was entirely unneeded. Upon standing at this spot, Reed's thoughts were clearer than fire at night. His unrestrainable sword spirit could fleetingly even be felt on the skins of the bystanders. It was inconceivable that one possessing such sword spirit would remain without using his weapons. Reed was motivated, just like the previous loop, without giving any regard to the surrounding situation either. Hence, Julius made the preemptive strike without any indecision. That choice was the optimal solution. It could be affirmed that this precise strike aimed for dampening the calm and composed attitude of Reed here, a necessity to capture this first-generation sword saint. The problem was, Reed, do you have any idea what it means to be calm and composed? Reed, that's Bane able to do anything with flexibility regardless of whatever petty tricks are played. Ya idiot, is what it means. It was that Julius' preemptive strike had been intercepted and stopped by the 2 chopsticks Reed held in his hand. Julius, K.H. Hick. Reed. Well, it wasn't bad, you know. Had I not been the opponent, you would have probably made the opponent taste at least this one. Well then, let's go. Julius, she hic. Reed laughed like a shark against Julius, who choked on even his biting words. At the same pace, Reed gripped to one chopstick in each of his hands and swept away the tip of the sword, as well as at the same time, stomped ahead and launched blows from his chopsticks. The impact firmly struck the front of the knight's sword, giving rise to a clear echo. Two slim sticks far shorter than a sword in terms of length, but by being wielded by the expert known as Reed, turned into a weapon far greater than their size and bashed destruction. The moment subsequent to the clear echo, the outbreaking shockwaves made Julius' hair and clothes flutter, and sent cracks in all of the frozen parts of the aisle at once. Literally exceeding norms, going against common sense, a lump of abnormality befitting to be named as an error of the world. Even though Subaru had seen his physical strength several times in the past, seeing the personage himself rendered Subaru speechless. The negativity of the fact that such a monster existed in this world, and the devilish nature of the latent feelings of the designer who decided to include overcoming this monster as one of the conditions for the tower's capture, nauseated his chest. However, Reed, I'm actually impressed a bit. It was unknown how much of Reed's full strength had been applied into that blow of the chopsticks. However, it appeared that even that blow being accepted was out of Reed's calculations, and he commended Julius' fighting spirit for warding off the chopstick's strike. Receiving that, Julius squinted his eyes whilst blood seeped out from the edge of his mouth. Julius, after all, I must win against you or otherwise our calculations will flunk, you see. Reed, is it your intent to win while you're barkin' bout? Julius, I'm sure that must be the case, but allow me to give you company. At that moment, Julius' sword strike brimmed in light and was wildly received away by Reed with his two chopsticks. The sword's momentum got deflected, and Julius' stance crumbled was not the case. Julius, having considered his knight sword being swept away, rotated and connected the second sword blow with no lag whatsoever. Thus commenced a sword's dance, like the flow of refined water with not a single droplet wasteful. Subaru inhaled, witnessing the sword's dance piling up countless offense and defense with his own eyes. This was at most what Subaru was able to follow with his eyes. Yes, only what Subaru had been able to follow his eyes, but this was the proof of Julius Juculius' willpower and disciplining seeking to reach the sword saint, called to be the pinnacle of the sword. If Reed's might of the sword was like blazing flames, then Julius' swordsmanship was like flowing water. Speaking in terms of basic compatibility, then the water should extinguish the flames. However, the flames here were mighty, so mighty that they could simply evaporate the opposing water and reduce it to nothing. Perhaps many swordsmen akin to flowing water had been evaporated away by the blazing flames of Reed's swordsmanship. However, at the very least, Julius had no fear of throwing himself in there and getting himself evaporated as he continued launching destructive and unavoidable attacks upon Reed. And Emilia, don't think that your opponent is just Julius. Reed, ha hick, I ain't forgettin', fiercely frizzlin', your face is too good to forget. Emilia, thank you for the compliment, but there is only one person who truly remembered. Emilia joined in on Reed and Julius' swords dance, wielding a mountain of armaments of ice. Due to that, Reed turned one of his chopsticks against Julius and the other against Emilia. Whether that could even serve as a countermeasure, such banal sense of values were smashed by Reed's swordsmanship. Glaciation interrupted the sword's dance of blazing flames and flowing water, and the colors of the battlefield altered into further vividness yet again. The cast of the sword's dance had been changed by one, with Reed being the opponent instead of baiting Cato's, and Emilia and Julius' crude coordination resumed no. That also changed. Perhaps due to the enemy being stronger, but much more likely that the two of them brought together their battling style in this short interval and made amendments, somehow bringing it all together finally. Their cooperation turned into actual cooperation. Beatrice, Julius, is matching in with Emilia, in fact. Subaru, you get it. Beatrice, there's also their compatibility on the basis of their personality, I suppose. Emilia showed all her strength clearly, and Julius became capable of moving accordingly, in fact. Probably because of Emilia dropping the need to match in, I suppose. Subaru, what an amazing comment. Regardless, since it was going well, it had to have been the correct judgment. In the end, Emilia did not hold back and did everything at her own pace, and Julius matched in with the easy-to-comprehend movement of the other, adorning himself being his specialty. Reed, haha, good goin', you all, I'm startin' to have fun too, I. Emilia. Hiya, siya, heya, he-ya, joyfully brushing away the two whilst they cordially engaged with each other. Reed laughed loudly. Emilia then let out a shout and launched a mighty attack one would not think could come from that voice. But it failed to become the decisive blow. A marvelous swords dance, as if an illusion of water, fire, and ice intertwining. The knight sword of steel, the sticks that had seemingly been turned into steel due to the skill and force they were being used with, and the weapons of ice which struck, broke, regenerated, and gave rise to high-pitched notes. A sight so beautiful, capable of making one misunderstand that there was truly such a dance being performed. Stranger. She-yo-a-a. Henceforth, the dissonant existence which wedged itself in obstructively seared itself into everyone's minds as foreign to both eyes and ears. Subaru, bastard, hick, wedging himself obstructively and rudely into the space where the three unfolded their offense and defense, was lay baiting Cato's. The young boy who was supposed to have eaten Reed's kick and tumbled into a state of being almost dead. He stood up and rose once again, joining in on the battlefield as if he had not suffered any damage whatsoever. Baiting Cato's swung the daggers fastened to the wrists on both of his hands, alongside combining the battle techniques that made skillful use of his short limbs. He continuously fired fatal attacks onto the three from next to next. They caught Emilia, Julius, and Reed off guard, and the three respectively defended against them, troubled and hurriedly. However, their defense against them was imperfect, and some bits of their hair and clothes got sliced off. Julius, how stubborn of you to not give up, Sin Archbishop. Lay, ha-ha, shunning us and then having fun, stop doing such nasty things, Ni-sama. Always and always having it just to yourself, eh? How unfair, truly. Emilia. Reed, I'm sure you get it. There's no point even if we fight here. Will you help us just stay still at the very least, please? Reed. What a clueless woman you're, fiercely frizzlin'. I'm enjoyin' myself as things are, you know. Even if the great stars fall from the sky, my plans ain't bendin'. The four, whilst waging fierce and heroic blows upon each other, knocked their respective wills onto each other. This was a spectacle of battle, impossible to be approached readily, impossible to reach a common ground, impossible to be disunited from the odor of blood. For an outsider, it was difficult to judge who was at an advantage, who was at a disadvantage, who was superior, who was inferior. All what was possible was to hope for their allies' victory, however. Subaru. G.H. Beatrice. Subaru. And Beatrice was astonished to see Subaru, who could do nothing but watch and hope, kneel down whilst gripping onto his chest. Beatrice knelt down, touching Subaru's shoulder as he breathed hoarsely and looked at his face. Beatrice, Subaru, what's wrong, in fact? What happened, I suppose? Subaru, no, what is this? Beatrice, Subaru. Against Beatrice's desperate calls, Subaru tightened his grip onto his chest and repeatedly blinked. There was no possibility that he had made a mistake or a move. But even Subaru could not comprehend this. Peculiarly strange, unbelievable heat swelled up in the interior of his chest. His heart was beating at a rate as if it would explode. He could feel every single drop of blood flowing within his body. An awful and incomprehensible sensation, as if an alarm bell was sounding off. He did not understand. What was happening to his body right now? This was something that did not happen in any of the loops till now. Some sort of chronic sickness, or even worse, some sort of magical interference had possibly happened. Rushing across all of the knowledge he possessed in his mind, he went through the worst-case possibilities and shook his head. No, this was perhaps not something negative. The alarm bell was sounding only because of a problem. Subaru. Wah-ah. Inhaling deeply, he then exhaled. Till now, Subaru's brain had been getting seared by concern for Emilia and Julius, who were fighting Baiting Cato's and Reed before him. In terms of the situation, his powerless self could do nothing but stand and watch. In this situation, what seared Subaru's brain was the advance of the 5 obstacles, whilst they were busy with this being the 2 remaining obstacles. The 5 obstacles. One was the large horde of witch beasts which surrounded the tower. One was the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, who would launch an attack on the tower. One was Reed Istria, who would start freely walking around the tower. In the current situation, there were 3 present. The remaining 2 were the titanic scorpion which would wander around the tower with an expression as if it owns the place, and the colossal black shadow which would swallow the tower with fearsome vigor. Those 2 must also be dealt with, or the problems falling upon the tower shall not get disposed of. At the other side of Emilia and Julius' strenuous efforts, the moment he troubled over dealing with the possibilities seeking the collapse of the tower, his chest pounded with heat and made Subaru kneel down. His heart continued beating fiercely. Remaining conscious of his heartbeats, Subaru slowly breathed and closed his eyes. He thought that he should do what his body felt like doing. Abiding by that, he closed his eyes. Seeing Subaru's condition, Beatrice stopped her calls. Perhaps she possessed no affirmation either, yet she made that gesture. Subaru was blessed to possess such understanding comrades. And into the back of Subaru's eyeballs, a curious sensation welled up. They were faint, fleeting lights levitating against dim darkness. Subaru. Faint, warm, and blurry lights. There was one right beside Subaru and 2 at slight distance from him. Strangely enough, Subaru comprehended that there were lights behind him without even having to glance backwards. Behind him were 4 lights. One of them was at some distance from the rest, and he realized that one was approaching overhead. Subaru, Beatrice, Hiya Hick. For some reason, Subaru blindly trusted this sensation, and without any hesitation, leapt away from that spot as if jumping at Beatrice. Hugging the young girl's light body in his arms, Subaru tumbled onto the floor, lacking all faltering that instant. He grasped that scorching heat raided the thigh of his right leg, as he gave rise to a wail of anguish. Subaru, go, oh. He instantly realized that the burning sensation was generated from a deep wound. Perhaps in an attempt to turn his eyes away from his wounded leg, Subaru looked at Beatrice whilst hugging her, and forcing his eyes to open through the pain and tears, he saw. Subaru, I knew it'd come, this scorpion. Hick. Subaru threw that up in rage, and what had appeared before him was, this being the second chance meeting with it as well, the titanic scorpion, the scorpion, possessing a black shell and eyes like red luminous dots, had the rest of its legs crawl on the wall as it lorded over Subaru and the others. Beatrice? Ah! In front of the horrifyingly humongous creature, Beatrice widened her eyes. What Beatrice could see in front of her were pincers of the scorpion that had gouged out Subaru's leg deeply. The scorpion ecstatically upheld Subaru's flesh in its pincers, dripping a large amount of blood onto the aisle. He had been worried about the obstruction of the titanic scorpion. The 5 obstacles he needed to overcome had all assembled here. This was bad. 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 Comprehending how unfavorable the situation was, Subaru tried searching for a means of survival within his thoughts, which were being scorched by ache. However, nothing dawned upon Subaru as to what could bring about a positive change in the situation. Baden Kato's was here, Reed was here, even the titanic scorpion had appeared. Even if Meili and Shala restrained the horde of witch beasts, the other cards had already failed to function well with these turn of events. This will not do. This path will not do. With a further different way of action, Subaru, gnashing his teeth, was able to hear 3 voices calling for him strike his eardrums. Beatrice's poignant voice, Julius' tensed voice, Emilia's pleading voice. Subaru heard them respectively call for him, and Baden Kato's, Reed, the titanic scorpion, then moved towards each of them respectively, as if in order to hinder the actions, the road of Natsuki Subaru. But even earlier than that, an impact struck the tower with immense vigor. The entire tower vehemently quaked, and a thunderous roar echoed. With the same pace it made Subaru's body. Lying on floor, the jump blew away Amelia and the others who had unfolded offense and defense, crushed even the titanic scorpion's shell as the world crumbled. The small body beside Subaru was hugging him seemingly in order to protect him. Hugging back that soft body, Subaru widened his eyes in the midst of the impact. I love you. There present was solely the darkness harboring blind love as it tried to swallow Subaru. The scene changes. At that instant, everything in the world, white and black, men and women, love and hate, all had been consumed by the quaking impact, but solely Natsuki Subaru managed escaping it. Stranger. Subaru. Subaru. Hick. Stranger. Ahia hick. A call to him. As if pulling that in, Subaru hugged the owner of that voice. Within his arms, the body moved about in fluster and panic, looking upwards from the middle of his chest. That was Subaru. Trice, Beatrice. Why, yes, I suppose. Doing this suddenly is surprising, in fact. Well, it's not as if Betty doesn't like it, I suppose. But Betty was just worried that you just returned from the book. But seeing Betty's name being called first is relieving, I suppose. Yes, Beatrice whispered whilst remaining in Subaru's arms. Hearing her words, Subaru looked around himself. What had happened immediately previously? He had fallen onto the aisle. His leg had also been wounded, and then into that dark, dark shadow. Subaru, library, stranger. For the moment, if you could clear whether you are still half asleep or not, then I believe we could proceed with our codes of action as well. Natsuki-kun. That voice struck Subaru, who was astonished to find himself surrounded by the vast amount of books. Upon looking, that had been Echidna, smiling wryly whilst caressing her light purple hair. Behind her was the shelf she leaned on, and Meili, who rested her chin on her hands, saying, You're finally UP. Beatrice, wah, 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 Subaru, what happened, in fact? Are you not feeling well after all, I suppose? Can you speak about what you saw in the book? Subaru. Well, I also need to do that, but... Subaru tightly hugged Beatrice's petite body and enjoyed her warmth, and recognized the reality that he must recognize. He had returned to this moment. Subaru returned to this moment, having failed to overcome the 5 obstacles.